afternoon. My name is Professor Eddie, and I'm here to introduce Dr. Salix and Dr. Stover, who will be instructing us today on the issues, benefits, and processes of making cellulosic ethanol. We're going to start out today by kind of running through the process that it takes to make cellulosic ethanol. One, biomass is harvested and delivered to the biorefinery. Biomasses consist of anything from wood products and cardboard to switchgrass and most commonly mentioned corn stover. After the biomass is produced, it is delivered and cut into shreds and pre-treated with heat and chemicals to make cellulosic accessible to enzymes. There's different forms and different processes to making it, and so it's either going to use the heat or the chemicals. Next, we move to here. It says enzymes break down cellulosic chains into sugars. Sugars and different carbohydrates to make the ethanol into something worth using. Next, it moves and the microbes ferment sugars into ethanol. The fermentation takes place in this tank that you see on different stations across the country. And then finally, the ethanol is purified through distillation and prepared for distribution. Now we're going to turn our time over to Dr. Salix, who will instruct us on different feedstocks used in the cellulosic ethanol making process.
Hey there! I bet you're wondering, what does cutting logs have to do with ethanol? Well, did you know that things like sawdust, wood shavings, and bark, and other things left behind from the logging operations can be used to make cellulosic ethanol? It's true! The sources used in the cellulosic ethanol process are grouped into several categories. Three of the largest groups are forest residue, agricultural residue, and municipal solid waste. Sawdust and leftover wood shavings from mills and logging fit into the forest residue category. Other things you can find in this category are fast-growing trees, such as willows, like this big guy behind me. They are farmed and harvested in cycles, as well as waste paper pulp and other byproducts from paper mills are used. The U.S. Department of Energy's biomass program has 3 biorefineries that use forest residues such as sawdust and wood shavings to produce cellulosic ethanol. 2 are in Michigan and 3rd in Mississippi. These 3 biorefineries have a combined total biofuel capacity of nearly 40 million gallons per year. The second group is agricultural residues. These consist mostly of stover left over from harvesting corn, sorghum, and soybean plants. This material is often used to feed cattle or simply left out in the fields. Being able to use corn stover instead of the kernels would keep the supply of corn in the market up and therefore aid in keeping the price of corn and corn products down for the consumers. This is a good thing. Currently, there are 4 biorefineries in the United States participating in the biomass program. 1 in California, 1 in Kansas, another in Iowa, and the 4th in Illinois. Together, these 4 refineries have a biofuel capacity of over 50 million gallons per year. The third source I'm going to discuss is found probably in the last place you'd expect, right inside your trash can. Yep, that's right. Municipal solid waste is another large source of material for cellulosic ethanol. All paper products such as cardboard, tissue, and paper towel leftovers, newspapers, and anything else made from paper or wood products. There are 2 biorefineries in the biomass program that do this type of processing. One is located in Mississippi and the other in Florida. These refineries have a biofuel capacity of 18 million gallons per year. Well, that's all I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed your stay with us, and I hope you learned something. I gotta get back to work.
We'd like to thank Dr. Salix for coming and being here with us today and introducing the feedstocks that are used in the cellulosic making process. We'd now like to introduce Dr. Stover, who is here today from Minnesota State and who is going to be teaching us about the limiting factors in the actual chemical process that goes into making cellulosic ethanol.
No, I don't want to answer that question. No, leave me alone. No, I can't talk about that right now.
Professor Stover! Professor Stover, wake up!
Whoa.
I think you're having a bad dream.
Where am I? Oh no, not again. I'm so sick of having these nightmares when I get bombarded with questions about what we should do about our foreign dependency on our energy sources. If only they could develop more efficient ways to convert feedstocks into fuel.
What does that mean?
Let me tell you about it. Let me teach you about the limiting factors of cellulosic ethanol production. The most limiting factor for cellulosic production is that it requires an extra step that corn ethanol doesn't require. Take a look at this corn stalk. If you could see into the structure of the cell walls, we'd see a combination of lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose. In order to access the cellulose and hemicellulose, it must be separated from the lignin. This is where the acid pressure or heat spoken of in the introduction is needed. Sulfuric acid has been a common medium used to perform this process. Once the cellulose is isolated, enzymes are needed to break down the cellulose into sugars. These enzymes are very, very expensive, and this process is where much of the research regarding cellulosic ethanol is being conducted.
Now the difference between cellulose versus these edible forms of glucose polymers that we normally would have is simply the way that they're connected together, the orientation of that connection. In most of the edible forms we have an orientation that leaves it more exposed and open, so it kind of connects in a form like this. Whereas with the cellulose, it has a linkage that would be more of a planar system. And it's the enzyme's ability to bind and recognize that link and break it. That's really what's at the heart of the cellulase enzyme. Is about $6 per gallon of ethanol, just in terms of the cost of the cellulase enzyme that's produced. Because that has to be produced by all kinds of means and then manufactured and then sent out and sold. With the stimulus a few years back, the government invested $34 million into 4 different companies to develop new generations of these cellulase enzymes. And so certainly they don't reveal exactly what they've done, but they've been able to bring the cost down to the point to where they're now approaching about $1 a gallon. And they're hopeful that in the near future they should be able to push that down even further, approaching about 50 cents per gallon. And the projections are to get it down eventually to about 30 cents per gallon.
Once the cellulose is broken down into sugars, enzymes ferment the sugar and it undergoes the following chemical change. Glucose, C6H12O6, yields ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide.
Cellulosic ethanol? It's true!
Let me tell you about cellulosic ethanol. Cellulosic ethanol.